So this is the Sagrada Família. In 2025 alone, more than 4.5 million people visited. So they planned for it, they flew across the entire world to go there, and it's not even finished. It has been under construction since 1882. None of the people who were there when the foundation was being laid will be there to see this monument being finished. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We've been saying this for centuries, as if beauty is just a matter of personal taste, and as if there's nothing more to say about it. There's a lot more to say about it, because beauty is not arbitrary. It's biological, it's mathematical, it's neurological, and it has real-life consequences. So let's ask the real questions. What actually happens when you see something beautiful? Seeing something beautiful activates the medial orbital frontal cortex. It triggers the same reward circuits that respond to food, or safety, or meeting a potential partner. That releases dopamine. Beauty isn't just a soft concept, it's a biological signal. The brain registers beautiful things as important. And here's where it's also getting interesting for people like us who make things. In 2025, a study measured the metabolic costs of visual processing. Your visual system consumes almost 44% of the total energy budget of the brain. So the finding of the study, images that require less energy to process are rated as being more beautiful. That means the brain rewards efficiency. It rewards when things are easy on the eye. And this is called processing fluency. I talked about it in one of my previous videos where I talk about designing luxurious objects. And processing fluency by itself is one of the most powerful and most practically applicable findings in the science of aesthetics, because symmetry, proportion, visual order, clarity all reduce cognitive effort, and all of these points can be designed consciously. So when a designer is choosing simplicity over clutter, they're not just going for their personal preference, but they target hardwired processes that run in our brain. So does that mean beauty can be measured? Well, yes, sort of. In the 1870s, a philosopher called Gustav Fechner started running experiments with rectangles. He was trying to find a mathematics of beauty, and he kept landing on the same number, 1.618, the golden ratio. It's that proportion that can be found in shells, in sunflowers, in nature, in faces, but also not coincidentally, in some of the most beautiful things humans have ever created. This golden ratio that appears throughout nature is associated with perceived beauty even across cultures. Then in 1933, a mathematician wanted to go further. George Birkhoff proposed the formula: aesthetic value equals order divided by complexity. A cluttered interface with more than 50 visual elements that compete with each other has a measurably lower aesthetic value than a clean one. So less is more. It's not just an opinion. It's something that can be formulated as a mathematical formula, even if it's not used that way in our day-to-day practice. It at least hints at something deeper. It's something that goes beyond just personal preference. And then there are also Gestalt principles. It describes exactly how the brain groups, orders, and makes sense of visual information. So proximity, similarity, continuity, symmetry. These are not things invented by designers. They are descriptions of how the human brain actually works. So when designers use these aspects, they are using the brain's own operating system. Also, let's be honest here, the golden ratio can be a guidance. It's not a formula. Researchers have found that it doesn't apply equally across cultures and that it can be over-applied. There is genuine variation between what people find beautiful, especially if you go above the biological layer when it comes to style, color, culture, but that still doesn't mean it's just personal taste. So why do beautiful objects work better, even if they don't? In 1995, two Japanese researchers created two different ATM interfaces. And then they took these ATM interfaces and showed it to participants. There was a stronger correlation between how beautiful something looked and how usable people perceived it to be than between the beauty and the actual usability of it. So even if there's no difference in the way you interact with an object, just having it look beautiful makes people also feel that it works better, that the usability is improved. So in short, beautiful designs are perceived to be easier to use, even when they are not. Norman took it a step further and defined the three levels of emotional processing. First level is the visceral level. It's the immediate gut reaction to appearance and form. Does it look right? The second level is behavioral. It's the satisfaction of use. Does it feel right in your hand? And the third level is the reflective one. It's about meaning and identity. What does owning this object say about me as a person? The best hardware products work at all three levels at once. Dieter Rams, the German industrial designer that defined Brown's design language in the 50s and 60s, was clear about it. He said that good design is aesthetic, not merely as a preference, but as a functional claim. The aesthetic quality of a product is integral to its usefulness because products we use every day affect our person and our well-being. And we all heard about it. John Ive stated it specifically that he was strongly influenced by the work of Dieter Rams and Brown. It's a direct inheritance of the same argument. Restrained surfaces, honest materials, and as little design as possible. And there's also another Japanese engineering methodology. It's called Kansei Engineering. And it maps the emotional reaction that users have to specific visual attributes. This can be a surface curvature, a specific radius, a material. Each of these aspects is defined and decided upon not because of personal preference, but because empirical data showed that a specific combination triggers a specific emotional reaction. This can be premium quality, trustworthiness, or whatever it is that they want to achieve with this specific item. So again, this method is beauty engineered and measured, and not just felt or personal taste. So for some designers, this might be an intuitive choice and they just rely on their intuition when they make these decisions. But if you know about these principles, then you can also make a clear argument about it. It's not just a feeling, but it's a clear choice for a reason. Now I want to talk about architecture as the proof that beauty moves people. So let's return to where we started, Sagrada Família. Again, more than 4.5 million people visited last year. It makes more than 130 million in income just by admission. It was rated by TripAdvisor users to be the most beautiful building on earth. So to me, this is undeniable proof that beauty has real-life economic and behavioral consequences. There's another documented effect in environmental psychology, the cathedral effect. And it says that high ceilings promote expansive, creative, and abstract thinking, while low ceilings encourage detail-oriented and focused work. The evolutionary explanation, high and open spaces satisfy a deep human preference, and they signal safety. The brain responds to architectural volume as it responds to landscape. The neurological discipline that looks at these effects is called neuroarchitecture. It looks at alterations of brain functions, emotional states, and behavior. The ceiling height, the light quality, the spatial enclosure, the acoustic properties. They have a measurable effect on cognition and mood. But the Sagrada Família is not simply beautiful in the sense of processing fluency, the way we described it so far. It's not minimalist, it's not simple or easy on the eye, it's overwhelming, it's dense, it's inexhaustible. That also means that there are two kinds of beauty. The kind that is easy and the kind that is vast. Architecture proves that both are real. So let's talk about the sublime, when beauty overwhelms the self. Philosophers have made a distinction for centuries that modern science is just catching up to. There's beauty and there's the sublime. Beauty is harmonious, proportioned, pleasurable. It is what fluency theory describes, the golden ratio, dithyrambics, the well-made object that sits right in the hand. But the sublime is something different. The sublime is vastness that exceeds comprehension. It's the storm, it's the canyon, it's the cathedral. Kant says the sublime occurs when something is so vast that our existing mental frameworks cannot contain it and must be rebuilt. In 2003, two psychologists studied this empirically. In their paper on psychology of art, they describe it as a structural disruption of the brain. It's not just a strong emotion, it's an experience so intense that it forces the brain to rebuild its model. So this means it's not about adding new information to what you already know. It's taking existing information and having to reframe and restructure it. And the neurological consequences are measurable. People who experience awe talk about shifted time perception. Time moves slower. The self feels expanded. There's an increase in generosity and a decrease in self-focus. It can have a long-term shift in their relationship with meaning and purpose. So awe does not only feel significant, it is significant, it changes people. But that also resolves what looked like the paradox in science. Processing fluency says that beauty equals cognitive ease, but some of the most beautiful things humans have ever created are extraordinarily complex. They resist processing. By fluency standards, they are basically the opposite of beautiful. So the resolution is that fluency and awe are different mechanisms. Fluency beauty rewards the brain for efficiency. Sublime beauty rewards the brain for being overwhelmed into growth. Great design usually achieves one. Transcendent design achieves both. Something that is immediately right but also inexhaustible. Designing for God, the most extreme design brief in history. The most beautiful buildings on earth have mostly been built for the same client. And the brief was very specific. The buildings must be worthy of God's presence. It must be the finest things humans can make, and it must be an offering, not a product. Everything done for God must be done with the greatest care and the greatest beauty, not because God needs it, but because the act of making it that way is in itself a statement of value. I find it really interesting because it inverts every assumption of modern design. We optimize for users. We test for experience. We reduce friction. We measure satisfaction. But the architects of the great cathedrals didn't optimize for the user. They were working towards an unreachable standard. They went all the way in every single detail. They would even carve the capitals of a 60-feet column in the greatest detail, even if not a single person could see all these details from where they would be standing. And they did it that way because it was the right thing to do for the purpose. Sacred architecture is complex, not simple. It stands with meaning, not stripped of it. It violates processing fluency and yet produces the most visited buildings in human history. The complexity of sacred buildings is not random noise. It's densely coded meaning. Every element of a Gothic cathedral encodes theology. The cruciform plan is the body of Christ. The rose window symbols eternity. The light that comes through the stained glasses represents divine presence. The geometric patterns on Islamic tilework represent the infinite. The complexity is legible once you have the code. There's research on what is called challenging art. It found a dual process at work. Fluent, easy stimuli are liked immediately, but complex stimuli that resist easy processing can generate greater appreciation after effortful engagement. That is what researchers call cognitive mastering. So when you finally understand a vault system or the narrative on the stained glass story. The reward is proportional to the effort. The brain treats mastery of complexity as discovery. Aesthetic appeal is tapping into a basic biological mechanism we have for getting pleasure from understanding. The Sagrada Família has been under construction since 1882. The people who laid the foundation did not live to see the walls rise. Gaudi himself, who devoted his last 15 years of his life to this project alone, never even saw the towers emerge. So it's still being built, and even if it's not finished yet, it still attracts so many people and generates so much profit every year. And the funny thing is that it was never designed to be commercially successful. It was designed to be worthy of an infinite standard. And I found that to be a really provocative design case. Let's go back to answer the real question here. Is beauty subjective or objective? And as usual, the answer is somewhere in between. It's not purely subjective. The neuroscience, the evolutionary biology, the mathematics, the cognitive psychology, they all point to the same conclusion. Some beauty responses are hardwired, universal, cross-cultural, symmetry, proportion, cognitive ease, the golden ratio as a tendency, processing fluency. These are not preferences, they are features of the human perception. But beauty is also not purely objective. Above the biological flaw, culture shapes what we find to be beautiful. Personal history shapes it. Familiarity, trends, the brain's plastic. It updates its templates, its frame of reference. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. True, in the sense that the eye belongs to the brain, and the brain has rules. So what we now can say is this: there are three distinct registers of beauty, and they operate through different mechanisms. Register 1, fluency beauty, symmetry, proportion, cognitive ease. Universal, fast, hardwired. It applies directly to industrial design and user interface design. The brain rewards. This is easy, this is right. Then we have register 2, mastery beauty. Complexity that rewards deep engagement. Art that grows with repeated viewing. Architecture that reveals itself over time. The brain rewards, I understood something difficult here. Then we have the third register, awe, or the sublime. It contains vastness that overwhelms the self. Cathedrals, mountains, great works. The brain rewards, I am part of something greater. It's ego diminishing, transformative, and long lasting. I would say good design reaches register 1. But I also feel like great design taps into register 2 as well, where you really feel like an emotional connection and bond. And then we have these buildings, architecture worldwide, that operate all the way through register 3. So my question as a designer to you as a designer, what if we remove the user from the design brief? What if we don't design for their personal preference, for their time, for their needs? But what if we design for something larger? And I'm not talking about we all have to be faithful designers or whatever. But just imagine ourselves to design for a higher purpose. How could that look like? What if the standard is infinite, that it demands only the very best of what we can achieve and what we can do every single time, and not because people will notice, but because it's the way to do for that design brief? I'm curious how objects would look like if we really intend to design them for the greatest possible purpose. So here is where the video ends. I hope you got a glimpse of what I think about beauty and the science behind it. So I don't think beauty is just decoration. I don't think it's just a preference. I think it's a biological signal and reaction. And when taken seriously enough, it can become something that outlasts its creator and what else, and who knows what else. So the next time someone in a design meeting says, that's just aesthetics, then maybe you have some different thought about it.